Hey Duelists, and happy Spooktober. This is now week 3 of the Spooktober event, so that means that before we really get into this whole side deck tech profile, I need to announce the week 2 winners. And here to help me do that is my Spooky Card Zero from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So just real quick, those are Vabra Sanu, Romulo Mores, and Rylan Aurora this week. If you guys could go ahead and send the mailing addresses to casualduelist78@gmail.com. And again, sorry about that. I sort of rushed my writing. All three of you had some pretty cool things to say. Rylan, you've just been commenting on like literally every video since you started viewing with us. Romulo, this video is actually in part for you because I know I don't normally do side decks. And the reason for that is regional differences, and I've come to find out a few of my viewers are actually not in the United States, which is absolutely amazing to be able to know that I'm being seen sort of like on an international stage. And because of that, I do try to stick away from something that would be more rigid. I think like main decks are okay to be like that, but I don't think that side decks are. I think you should really prepare for what's in the region. And Vabra, you got the top vote from the rest of my team. They were like, wow, anybody who wants to see the channel grow should definitely get a prize at least once. So I agreed. We picked you guys. I'm just going to leave that up there. Let's get into some cards for those side decks, shall we? Now, I don't think we can talk about side decks without saying that hand traps are definitely an important deal. And to go with that, obviously not every main deck should be running the hand traps in them. And that's just because sometimes you're a little more goal-oriented. Like there's a certain board state that you need to accomplish in order for your deck to work properly. And again, we're going to talk about some of the most basic first. I chose 6 today. So the first one I chose is Effect Veiler. It's one of our first hand traps that we received, and it's been one of the best ever since. And this lets us go ahead and negate a monster's effects for the turn during the opponent's turn. Of course, we got to talk about Ash Blossom because we want to stop them from interacting with their own deck. So we can stop them from adding a card from the deck to the hand, we can stop a special summon from the deck, or we can stop a card going from the deck to the discard via effects like Foolish Burial and Foolish Burial Goods. So obviously very good. And of course, Snow Ogre, or Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit rounds out the trio of the most played in my opinion. And this one is whenever a spell trap or a monster is going to go ahead and use its activated effect, you can a quick effect, send this from the hand or field to the grave, destroy the card. Now, on some cards, they do and will say that the monster or the spell trap does not need to stay on board for resolution of their effect to go through. But other times, you're going to be able to take out field spells, back row, cards that have an ongoing effect, and definitely, of course, monsters. So, very good. Also a tuner, and awesome. One of the lesser played ones is actually the Ghost Spell in Haunted Mansion, and it actually stops graveyard interaction to an extent. So, the adding of a card or cards from the graveyard back to the hand, the deck, or the extra deck, or the one that I use the most is the special summoning of a monster or monsters from the graveyard. Again, a lot of decks, like Linked Dragons, the Gladiator to Beast deck profile that we did, and a ton of others. Just, they really look for that interaction in the graveyard to be able to special summon cards back. And Belle's going to be able to stop that. And the third one that she does is stop the banishment of a card or cards from a graveyard. So she's pretty cool. One that wasn't reprinted in the Dual Devastator was the Drawlin Lockbird, but we did get this during the Edmund structure deck. This one says if a card or cards is added from the main deck to the opponent's hand, except during the draw phase, as a quick effect, we can send this from the hand to the graveyard for the rest of the turn. Cards cannot be added from either player's main deck to the hand, and this stops decks that need like a ton of draw. Or searches. Again, there are some decks that are very tutor-oriented, and they will search off multiple cards in a turn. And maybe this isn't seen as much play as it used to, but it's still very viable and still worth looking at. And one of my favorite blasts from the past is the DD Crow. This guy's got a little effect during either player's turn. You can discard it and target a card in the opponent's graveyard to banish. And this is great to help miss timing on your opponent's cards and effects, especially when you're dealing, again, with like resurrection type effects. Like Monster Reborn gets activated, they want to bring back something powerful. Let's say Warlords Savage Dragon. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drop DD Crow after they make target. I'm going to go ahead, respond. I'm going to target the same card. It's gone, effect fizzles, and we're just done there. So that's pretty awesome. And it's been around for like almost forever. It's just a great card. I got a couple more monsters here for you guys. The first one I'm going to bring up is Artifact Lancia and Scythe. They both play a little bit differently. I've seen Lancia in more side decks than Scythe, but that does not mean that Scythe is not good. They can both be set as a spell trap. During the opponent's turn, if it is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon it, and this is where they start to change their effects. So Lancia is going to say, during the opponent's turn as a quick effect, you contribute this card from your hand or face up on the field. Neither player can banish cards for the rest of the turn, which is great because you do not actually have to have this one destroyed, but you could. And again, if you're playing something a little more control-oriented, there's always going to be that bit of back row destruction. So it's good to be able to pack something like this, but you don't have to board this one. Now, Scythe, on the other hand, this is going to be when this is special summoned. During the opponent's turn, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. This can go ahead if they're going to try to destroy the back row before going for their loop. Especially if it's an extra deck, as a link-related loop. You can actually shut it off right there, and they pretty much have to pass turns, so... And again, he's not too bad. He's got a little 2200 power. Pankratops is another great decision. He's been reprinted a few times, and it was in pretty rapid succession. He was in a Megaton, he was in the Dual Devastator, and he was, I believe, a common in the set that he was released in. And a little better than the Cyber Dragon of 10 years ago, how we used to play. Because now you're allowed to have a monster on your side of the field. If your opponent controls more monsters than you, you may special summon this card from your hand. You can only special summon this named monster once per turn this way. And as a quick effect, you contribute one Dino Wrestler monster you control. Target a card your opponent controls, destroy it. You can use this effect once per turn. And again, this is like another good reason to have the Ghost Ogre. But honestly, 2600 power. He's big, he's beefy. And the fact that he can offer himself to just blow up something that's in your way is very good. Can't talk about side decks without talking about Kaiju cards. And I went ahead and I packed 3 of them today for 3 different reasons. Gamma CL seems to get the most play due to its lower attack power. The Jizakuru will definitely be in more machine decks, especially Cyber Dragon related. And Radion can help you in the aspect of the fact that he's just a dark attribute. And anybody who's trying to fusion trap with Super Poly, going for Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, makes him an excellent piece to a combination rather than just the whole play on his own. In all these instances, you're going to tribute an opponent's monster to special summon this to their side of the field in attack mode. And that's pretty awesome. And of course, you can't talk about Kaijus without talking about Nibiru, the Primal Being. And of course, he is one of the better stop plays for your opponents right now, especially against anything that's going to sit there and just loop. So during the main phase, if the opponent normal or special summons 5 or more times, quick effect, tribute as many face-up monsters on the field as possible. If you do, special summon this from your hand on your side, special summon a Primal Being token to the opponent's side. Same stats, it'll be a light, it'll be an 11 star, it will be a rock. And the attack and defense will become the combined attack and defense of all the monsters tributed. And this is a once per turn effect, so you're not going to Nibiru and then Nibiru again. But that's it for my extra deck monsters, or side deck monsters. Let's go ahead and talk some spells real quick. So we got Super Polymerization. Again, not every deck is going to run this in the main, but one thing I would suggest to you guys if you're going to side this is do not side your fusion monsters. try to find the space in the main deck for them, because nothing telegraphs to your opponent that you're setting up for a super poly play in game 2 or 3, like actually grabbing your extra deck as well. And I don't care what level of competition you are, nobody is that interested in their own extra deck that they're not going to be watching the opponent's side out. So yeah, super poly. You got the Dark Ruler no more, and this is actually finding more room in going second decks these days, and for good reason. Negate the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of this turn, and for the rest of this turn, your opponent takes no damage. Neither player can activate monster effects in response to this card's activation, which is good, and it's really just there to help you break the board, and nothing more. So... And again, we got to talk about those back row decks, because again, Altergeist and Subterra Control are definitely still, viable. So I didn't want to talk about Lightning Storm, and the reason is, number one, it's a $100 card, and I cannot tell you guys to go and spend $300 to put 3 cards in your extra deck or in your side deck. And I'm going to keep messing that up, so bear with me. But I can't tell you guys to drop $300 on 3 cards. Not when you have Cosmic Cyclone. Pay 1,000, target a spell, trap, banish it. That'll help you get through some of it. Twin Twisters has been printed a few times. It's been super, it's been ultra. It's been common in a structure deck. I think it was in the dinosaur build. Discard a card, destroy up to 2 target spell traps on the field. Harpy's Feather Duster, having come back off the ban list, and you don't have to, have an empty field to use it, means that you could just go ahead and destroy all the spell traps that your opponent controls. And if you were using the Lightning Storm for the monster effects, I'm pretty sure Ragakai is up to 3 at this point, and so is Dark Hole. So you just activate the Dark Hole on before you start doing any real loop, and Ragakai doesn't really matter because whatever. Now, Romulo, I did want to send you an additional card. I know we picked you as a winner, but the next card has had a name change. So it's called Silent Graveyard now, and it was Forbidden Graveyard. And what I have is a play set of these here for you. This is not going to take place of the prize that you've won for this, but I would like to send you these as well to help you against those hand traps for your zombies. And I'm going to tell you why. So this card's effect is just discard a card, and effects that activate in the graveyard this turn are negated. And I know that there's a little bit of controversy online. Will this or will this not hurt a hand trap? And the answer is just yes. Their cost is paid in the hand. The effect activates in the graveyard. And anybody who wants to tell me no, you guys can explain to me why Abyss Dweller has essentially the same effect. Detach material from this card. Your opponent cannot activate any card effects in their graveyard this turn. Tell me why we're all using Abyss Dweller for hand traps. If that doesn't work, it does. Therefore, Silent Graveyard, or Forbidden Graveyard as it was called, is in fact a very budget version that, unfortunately, playing the zombies the way that you do, you will not be able to use Mizuki that turn, because you won't be able to do perform the effect in the graveyard. You'll just have to wait one turn to do that. But if you're doing it during your opponent's turn or after you did a Mizuki play, whatever, that should be fine. And like I said, I want to give you a play set of the original Forbidden Graveyards because I have these extra right now. So seriously, just get at me, guys. And I will go ahead and get those mailing addresses and we'll get that sent out to you guys. Another great card for dealing with those hand traps would be the trap card Different Dimension Ground. And again, I'm always talking about Dual Devastator to my team, and it's because for $40, you get more than $40 worth of cards. And it's just, you get a copy of the hand traps, you get the Call by the Grave, you get the Solemn Strike, you get the Red Reboot. Vanity's Fiend is a nice ultra rare. But you'll get this card as well. So this turn, any monster sent to the graveyard is banished instead. And this will hurt all hand traps, save for one. and that's going to be Ash Blossom, and you just need to really read. You discard this card, negate the effect. Read this one, discard from hand to graveyard, hand or field to graveyard. This is a discard, so Ghost Bell would be unaffected. Drollin Lockbird to, should say, yeah, hand to graveyard. So, for the most part, the different dimension ground is going to be good. And again, if your opponent's going to set up a loop where they're going to link and recycle the monsters, you can stop the recycling for the turn. So they should essentially pass turn. I know it's a little bit slower, but it's still viable and it's still there. Now, this one's not exactly budget. I found out this is still about $40, but infinite impermanence. And I don't know what to say about this card except it's good. If it's on the field, just flip it up, target face-up monster your opponent controls, negate its effects. And if it was set before activation, then you also negate any spell traps within the same column for the turn. However, if you control no cards because your opponent's going first, you can just activate it from your hand and get the Effect Veiler effect. Red Reboot's another great card. It's down to 1, and that makes it very accessible. I believe it was also a common in the Rocket structure deck. And Red Reboot is when your opponent activates a trap card, negate it, and if you do, set that card face down, and then they can set one other trap directly from their deck. For the rest of this turn after this card resolves, the opponent may not activate trap cards, and you can activate this from your hand by paying half your life points. Most of the time, you are just going to hold this. And honestly, you're usually going for game when you're going to use this anyway, so it's not that big of a drawback. And the last 3 cards I chose all have a very similar errata or effect. Those are Goes and Match, Rivalry of Warlords, and there can be only one. We're going to talk about these 2 first and why they're important, and then we'll go to this one. So most decks will share a creature typing or a creature attribute throughout the deck, and then you'll have some decks like Black Wings that share both. They are all dark, and they are all winged beasts. So they can use both. Now, the Goes and Match says each player sends monsters they control to the graveyard until they only control one attribute. And then you may not try to play or control monsters with different attributes. So again, in that instance, if you have Dark, you can't try to play any other attribute. And Rivalry of the Warlords is essentially the same card, but for the creature typing. And again, if you have a light type on the field and you're trying to tribute into a dark, even though you would only control one at a time, because you have the light, you may not try to tribute for the dark. And again, with the Rivalry Warlord, if you already have a warrior on the field, you may not tribute it for a spellcaster because you already have a warrior on the field, so you have to attempt warrior summons. Now, the way there can be only one is different, is each player can only control one monster of each type. So in that same instance, if you had 2 warriors and a spellcaster, you got to ditch one of the warriors. And even if you're trying to tribute a warrior for a warrior, you're still not allowed to do that because it's still the same typing as one that you currently control. So I know that this isn't the most comprehensive list. I know that there's some cards on that are definitely good, like Evenly Matched, that I just didn't talk about. Unfortunately, I thought that Impermanence was worth less, so I decided to use it today and did not have time to get any copies of Evenly Matched because I'm just a casual player. I don't actually have every card in the game. It just looks like it because I choose decks that I have. If you guys are wanting to win in week 3, 4, or 5, just keep leaving comments, okay, guys? I've got a couple of decks coming up this week. We're going to be doing the Double D or Triple D deck, depending on whether it's the base monsters or like the conquering boss monsters. And I do have a Bones zombie speed duel deck coming up. So keep on the lookout for that. And I'll see you guys later.